In November of 2023, the Swell Pod took a 10-day journey across 5 states, traveling 3,580 miles with one challenge in mind.
And that challenge was to interview 100 pleasantly rebellious humans to uncover deep truths about what it takes to create something that has never existed before, challenge the status quo, maybe even change the world.
This is the Kiln Road Trip, created and produced by the Swell Pod.
In partnership with Kiln, Moterra Camper Vans, and sponsored by Taurus.
I'm Spencer McKeown.
And I'm Josh Taylor, and together we're the co-hosts of the Swell Pod and your guides on the Kiln Road Trip. Follow along on the journey.
Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, follow the Swell Pod on social media, and subscribe to your YouTube channel at, you guessed it, the Swell Pod.
This is interview 93 of the Kiln Road Trip, and today we're at Kiln Leucadia in California talking with Julie Collens. Julie is the VP of Commercial Operations AMR at Oxford Nanopore Technologies. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoy.
So Julie, welcome to the Swell Podcast and the Kiln Road Trip. Thanks for being one of the 100.
Thank you.
We just simply came in today, didn't we, with the last leg of our journey. It's been a long trip. We've been away 10 days from our families, but we came to this tiny little location, our last one, and we just pulled you in at the last minute. So thank you for doing that. And we don't always know what it is that people do before sitting down. Some people have told us already and given us bios. I actually prefer it when I don't know.
Yeah.
And so
it's fun.
Great.
If we can ask you what you do, I'd love to know at some point what you've done in the past as well. But what you do and why you're passionate about it and what you're driving forward with and why.
Yeah. So I currently work for a company called Oxford Nanopore Technologies. And the company makes equipment to read and analyze genetic data. So think about like DNA, RNA, anything else that helps to understand biology. And my role there is VP of Commercial Operations for the Americas. So I run the commercial team and the technical services teams for Canada, the US, and Latin America.
That's great. And so previously, was it connected to that at all that you did?
Yeah. So I am the passion question. So I am extremely passionate about the information that's in genomics. So just to give a bit of background. So I did my PhD in population genetics and evolutionary biology, and then kind of took some weird career paths, but essentially in the pursuit of how we can identify parts of the genome and information about the genome that can be used to make healthcare better. And the company that I'm currently working for has just a really, really interesting technology and a way of understanding more about genetics.
How old is that company?
Well, that's a good question. I think they have been commercial for 11 years and have been around for 18 years.
Huh. And just remind me then, assuming I know nothing about this particular topic, which
but you know a lot, I'm sure. Just kidding.
Tell me what, just the basic version of what problem it solves, or like the context of a user case that we would maybe relate to.
Yeah, for sure. So undiagnosed diseases is probably the most understandable one. So there are, any number of diseases that are considered to be rare, but in aggregate, they actually affect huge numbers of people, right? And a lot of these cases, especially children that are even in the NICU, right? They're born and clearly something is not right, but they don't know what, and it's not really obvious. Sometimes you can look at the genetics and say, we can see that at this one particular spot, this is not how things should look. And the equipment and the analyses that my company does allows us to see not just obvious things, but also other kinds of unusual genomic variants or genomic mutations that other technologies can't pick up. So we can help to give, a parent a diagnosis. And like a lot of parents, especially in the NICU, right? Like they don't know if it was something that went wrong during childbirth or something that they did wrong during pregnancy. But if you can run a genetic test and you're like, look, it had nothing to do with anything you did. These things just sometimes happen, and sometimes there's a path forward. Sometimes, that diagnosis actually does help with treatment.
Interesting.
What was it that got you into evolutionary biology? Like why that field?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound like a silly answer, but it was mind-boggling to me. And this started in like high school, that just about any plant or animal or critter that you could see and look at has sort of a quirky, interesting thing, right? Like people are quirky and interesting, but it's like, why does that duck have blue feet? Or why does, this particular kelp do whatever it does? And so that started my interest in evolutionary biology for sure. And then looking at things at a population level and saying like these groups are related and therefore they do things that are more similar and their genetics are more similar. That whole field of biology I just think is really fascinating.
Yeah, that is really interesting. So has there been anything actually, let me take a step backwards. You said, so before this, you were at a startup. Yeah. Is that right? And it was your startup, you founded it?
It was my startup. Yes.
And can you explain what that was?
Yeah, so we were developing data sets and registries to accelerate the drug development process in dementia and other neurodegenerative diseases. So basically bringing the precision medicine process that we see in cancer into diseases like dementia.
Interesting. And how long were you building that company, building that product?
6 years.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, what kind of led to your transition, I guess, from that to what you're doing now?
So I think, can I tell you why I got into that in the first
place?
I feel like that story is more interesting.
Yes, you guide it for sure.
Right. So I was at Illumina. So it was another company that's similar to the one I work for now. It's a big company in San Diego. And they were the ones that developed a lot of the technology for companies like Ancestry or 23andMe. So their genetics work on that. And I was working in as a strategic marketing role. We were trying to accelerate the adoption of genomics in diseases like neuropsychiatric and neurodegenerative and even type 2 diabetes, stuff that tended to be later onset and have both an environmental and a genetic component. And Illumina had made a lot of investments and big bets in cancer testing and non-invasive prenatal screening. But I saw that there was this huge opportunity for neurodegenerative disease. And I was like trying to get that going and just like banging my head against the wall. And I had this conversation with a colleague of mine at Illumina who was based in the UK. And he's like, how are you doing? How are things at headquarters? And I was like, I'm so frustrated. Like there's just nobody that's like picking this up. And it's like, no, we're going to do the same thing we've always done. And his comment was, a lot of places are trying to find the next low-hanging fruit. And most of the time, the fruit is not low-hanging and it's not very ripe. And at Illumina, the fruit is rotting all over the ground. And I was like, let me get my fruit and get out of here. Yeah. So, and I still am convinced that that will be the future of neurodegenerative disease and dementia drug development. It just felt like it was too soon. There was just, I think not enough sufficient data sets or evidence that made pharma companies comfortable with taking that approach. So I just got to the point where I was like, I just need to table this for now. And and I really liked what Oxford Nanopore is doing.
Yeah. Is there obviously a big difference in building your own thing and then working for you said it was like a 1,300 person company? Yeah. Do you miss that grind of the build?
No, not yet.
No? Okay.
No, I think I've been in this new role for this might be my second month starting this week. So it's like really new. Yeah. I don't know. I'm loving being in a big company again where you've got colleagues and you've got somebody that you can go to for like, hey, can you review this contract? Or like someone else is in charge of payroll. Someone else is in charge of, facilities even, for example. And so that means that I can actually focus on the things that I think are really interesting and that are actually my job and that I think I'm good at. So I do not miss that yet.
Yeah. Okay. And so you're working out of Kiln.
Yes.
Are there any other employees at your current company that also work out of a kiln, or is it just you? And help me understand how, I guess, that came to be.
Yeah. So I actually made having an office at Kiln a part of my acceptance of this role.
Yeah, okay.
So I felt that strongly about it. So
Yeah.
I live I can walk home in 3.5 minutes. I live really close to here.
Wow.
But I also work on UK time or East Coast time. And so I end up having meetings at like 4 sometimes in the morning. Very often by 6 o'clock, I've got meetings. And I didn't want to be taking them from my house. And I didn't want to be, in the fray of people getting breakfast and trying to get out the door. Like I wanted to be somewhere else. And so I had worked here with my previous company and I wanted to have an office in a place that I could go to that was not my house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were here around the same time that we got here this morning, I think, right?
Yeah, and that was late for me.
Yeah, okay, yeah, for sure.
Well, hang on, we were here late last night at midnight.
Oh, that doesn't count, yeah. Spencer was out camping in the back, yeah.
I did. I camped in the
Did
van.
you really?
It was the worst. Well, I've done it for 10 nights in a row, and I don't know how long we've been here.
He's been doing a good job, yeah.
But that road works this morning at 5 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
I could have. It's just a killer. I couldn't believe it, but anyway.
We have a full-time leaf blower at my house, like a guy that just I don't know, he's got a chronic OCD leaf blowing thing. So I'm like, I'm not working from home. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
It's a nice place though. So how long have you lived here?
I moved to San Diego in 2012.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is nice.
Great weather.
Yeah. So have you been to the kilns all the way down the coast? These three? I assume.
Yeah, I've been to the one in Solana Beach and the one in Oceanside. Sorry,
Carlsbad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know. This one's, like I said, 3.5 minutes from my house.
This one's a nice little walk.
Convenient and. So we've been obviously on these trips all to the other ones. I recommend it as when you travel, ski, snowboard in Park City, or I don't know where you go, but there's so many places and some of them are so big, very focused on community. But yeah. So what is your current challenge other than getting up to speed with your current role? Biggest challenge right now that you're facing with what you're trying to achieve, whatever you can share?
Biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge for my company is that, like I said, they've been around or selling since about 2010. Yeah, it's been a while, but the company's made such huge strides in accuracy and in data quality and just getting that word out. Honestly, is kind of like. Even when I was interviewing for the role, I was like, wait, you can do that? You can do that? Like, I'm on top of stuff and I didn't know that. Like, if I didn't know that, do other people know that? And then, of course, nobody else knows that. So that's what we're trying to get the word about right now.
Lots of marketing or storytelling or what
both.
Is it?
Yeah. The storytelling is really powerful, especially in our industry, because you've got, researchers that will do something that's mind blowing. Like the example of the rare disease that I just gave, there's a researcher in Stanford that got a sample from a kid and 7 hours later had an answer. And that's really powerful. And so anyone else that's doing rare disease research has heard that story, right? So that for us is a big piece of it, is identifying the right key opinion leaders and famous scientists that can get the word out on our behalf.
Yeah, great. Well, before we ask some of the last one or two questions, what do you see the future being? That could be your industry or your future. What do you want to be doing? I don't know if it's writing books or maybe you've already written books, but what do you see? Who knows? What do you see the future like in your vision? The vision of either of those things.
Yeah, I think that the ability for genetic information to make a difference in people's lives is honestly ubiquitous. I think everything from infectious disease, we saw that with COVID, to understanding how best to even manage your own, lifestyle choices and behaviors based on what that puts you at risk for from your genetics. I just think that it's going to be that people in the future will have much more facility with that information and will be much more familiar with it in the same way that people know their height and weight. Really?
And you use the word facility then?
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean,
I
think I know
like
the
ease
context,
of understanding.
Just simply.
Yeah. Just that it's part of the ether and that it's not something that's really specialized.
They'll just assume it was always like that way, right?
Exactly.
And save lives.
Yes.
Which is ultimately a big part of it.
Right. And make people's lives longer, better, not just longer.
Right, higher quality. And the last one about just that product, like your use of machine learning. Do you use machine learning in this area and AI? And I assume it's like Hugely important. I don't know. I have actually no idea.
Yeah. I used machine learning in my previous company. That was a big part of what we were building were predictive models to understand how people might get dementia or people with dementia, what their outcomes were likely to be. I think that I have a friend who's also in this space, and he describes machine learning as being like teenage sex, where it's like nobody's really doing it the right way, but everyone thinks it's important, so they're all talking about it. Yeah. But everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, and maybe they're not. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
I like that. So the last question that we ask to everybody that's been on our podcast is, what does it take to create something that never existed before? Before we get into the rest of the episode, we want to thank the partners and sponsors who made the Kiln Road Trip possible. The Kiln Road Trip is brought to you by Kiln. Kiln is a boutique co-working and flex office community with 13 locations in 6 states across the West, dedicated to providing innovative workspaces that empower your team to thrive. Whether you're a solo visionary or an enterprise-level team of up to 100, Kiln transcends being merely a place to work. It's a hub for learning and connecting with like-minded professionals that will make you and your team love where you work.
And if you haven't stepped foot inside a kiln yet, you really need to. On this road trip, we visited every single location, and trust us when we say once you see these beautifully designed spaces, meet the talented team, and connect with fellow members, you won't want to work anywhere else.
Locations include Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, California, and Arizona. And they're growing too, with multiple locations set to open in 2024.
Yeah, so be sure to check out the kiln locations nearest you by booking a tour at kiln.com and answer Swell in the question, how did you hear about us? Once you complete the tour, you'll be entered into a competition where you could win a 1-year membership, their club membership at Kiln.
Yep, you heard that. That's kiln.com, book a tour, and be sure to mention Swell in the question, how did you hear about us?
The Kiln Road Trip is also brought to you by Moterra Campervans, a luxury campervan rental company for iconic road trips. Their top-of-the-line vans are available at 7 locations located near America's best outdoor adventure destinations. They have consistently earned the highest customer ratings in the industry, making Moterra Campervans your gateway to adventure without sacrificing on comfort or service.
That's true, and initially we wanted to take this journey in a 1960s VW bus, but thankfully we found Moterra instead. With 3 van options, we took the Pop Top Classic, which sleeps 4 and is best for those who want to maximize floor space and storage. This was critical for us because it needed to sleep the entire crew, we needed space to edit, and we were traveling with large amounts of equipment, luggage, and other goodies that we picked up along the way.
And this van took us through all 3,580 miles of the trip. Super comfortable and sweet to drive.
And actually, Moterra offers fully planned itineraries if you'd rather leave the planning to someone else.
Visit gomoterra.com/swell. That's gomoterra.com/swell.
This episode is also brought to you by Taurus. Taurus is leading the charge in home energy storage. Taurus makes it easy to achieve energy independence and a greener tomorrow. The Taurus Station provides everything you need to generate clean power, efficiently store electricity, and easily manage your energy use.
And installing a Taurus Station offers plenty of benefits, including save money on your electricity bill,
also ensure energy security with backup power during outages,
reduce carbon emissions with renewables.
You can also automate EV charging and HVAC systems with 100% renewables.
And enjoy unrivaled system monitoring and support.
If you like the sound of those benefits, get a quote to build your Taurus station in less than 30 seconds. Super easy at taurus.co. That's TORUS.co. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think novel ideas are hard to come by. I think the combination of novel ideas is more where the fertile ground lays.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Kiln Road Trip. Be sure to follow along on the rest of the journey, and you can do that in 2 ways. 1, subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or maybe even watching on YouTube, and follow along on all of our social media platforms, whether you're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok, at the Swell Pod. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.